Hey, it's Quadex here, and I'm gonna be doing What If Naruto was in the Anbu Part 5. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I think this is coming out on Christmas, and if it is, Merry Christmas. I hope you're doing the best with whatever conditions that is available. Um, so this isn't gonna be a full chapter since I didn't do a full chapter last time, and this is like a really long chapter. um Comment, like, and if you're not subscribed, which is like 60 something percent of you, um make sure to subscribe. So yeah, let's get into the story. One more thing, if you don't have anything to comment Q. By the way, I still haven't found any good what ifs. So I would appreciate if you guys have any suggestions, write it in the comment section down below. Let's get into the story. The day proceeded like any other normal day. Naruto worked with the third Hokage in the mission room, filing papers, organizing meetings, and taking down mission details. The Fire Daimyo's wife had arrived in Konoha a few days earlier and had already lost her pet on 4 different times. Several of Konoha's largest merchants were interested in obtaining a new breed of spice that was found growing in the land of rice. Although many of them were reluctant to pay the higher mission costs required, as relations with the land of rice had been strangely distant and more hostile than before. A quarter of shinobi from the village hidden in grass arrived with a routine message for the Hokage, and a dark cloaked man wanted a team to perform a dangerous mission to retrieve his family heirloom and had been whisked away to the Hokage's tower to debrief the elite shinobi who would need to complete a mission of that difficulty. All in all, nothing unusual. Later that afternoon, Naruto found himself leaping over the rooftops of Konoha, delivering messages to various people and businesses on behalf of the mission assignment office and the Hokage. From what Naruto had gathered, most were receipts and short messages on the details of the successful missions needed to claim when applying for tax cuts. There was one curious lumped parcel that had arrived from the initial delivery that had passed inspection, which was left at the reception desk of the Shinobi Academy. Naruto finished the last of his errands just as the sun was going down and made his way to the training ground each day. He was officially given 2 hours to work on his physical training. Unofficially, however, Naruto trained all day long on the various different projects he was working on. "Yo," Naruto called out as he entered the largest training field. It was the field that Naruto had selfishly allocated for himself, and it was perfect for his needs. It was a large clearing with a small river trickling through it, surrounded by trees. The noises here would be muffled by the foliage and keeping snooping visitors away. "Hey," one of his shadow clones returned the greeting. There were whole groups of them there, and each was working on a specific aspect of Naruto's training. 5 groups, at least 10 clones, worked in each part of his elemental nature manipulation, using leaves and chakra paper to hone this ability to generate elemental chakra. His natural affinity was wind, and it came to him as the easiest to form. However, the Hokage's natural affinity had been earth, but that hadn't stopped him from whipping out advanced elemental techniques of each nature in the past. Lightning was his worst at the moment, but his earth and water was coming along quite nicely as long as he didn't care about collateral damage. His fire worked beautifully. Naruto would not be satisfied until he had mastered each and every single affinity, just as the third Hokage had done before. It really got to him when he considered just how much further he needed to go, especially when the old man would make off-handed comments along the lines of, "You're still learning this. Why, when I was your age, I had already learned this as well as that. I guess you're just a slow learner." There was one group of working There was one group working on his chakra control, and they were contorted into weird poses. One of was handed standing on the water with one hand while using the other to swirl leaves around his palm. The other was hopping up and down a street while juggling spinning kunai. The last one was holding a spinning orb of chakra in his hand, a screeching noise emanating from the powerful technique that sent shivers on the real Naruto's back. That was probably the ultimate test in chakra control. The Rasengan, the powerful technique worked by rotating multiple rows of dense chakra in different directions while keeping it contained in a stable sphere in one hand. Naruto's warrior is working on the lethality of the technique, compressing the chakra even denser and trying to spin more and more of the chakra faster in different directions. Naruto spied the piles of disposable ramen containers lying on the ground and rolled his eyes. What a waste, he muttered to himself. He cleaned up the clearing as best as he could and began to work on his technique. The god of shinobi was famous for his collaborative techniques. When an average shinobi could perform a single technique in a few seconds, the third Hokage was able to weave through multiple techniques, often stopping partway through one to start another while keeping the different strands of elemental chakra separate from each other within his body and empowering his limbs and muscles with chakra. That was the level of proficiency in nature, shape, and chakra manipulation and control that Naruto was working towards. Naruto was not at the level yet, although he had somewhat bastardized version that produced similar results. It involved working with clones, each who would focus on one specific technique, while Naruto would direct and combine them all. That only worked because his clone used the same chakra as he did, and even though Naruto was a chakra juggernaut, the third one said that Naruto had more chakra at his age than he did. Even that left him quite fatigued in the end. Shadow clone, Naruto muttered with a puff of smoke. Somebody appeared right next to him. His replica gave him a dry look. This is going to hurt, he lamented. Naruto rolled his eyes. Get over it, he snapped. The clone nodded and formed the ram sign. From there, Naruto watched as his clone went through a series of hand seals, his fingers blazing in and out of the signs quicker than the eye could see. He knew what was happening even as the clone did it. From water element chakra, compressed it, stored it in a tenketsu of the upper back where mobility would not be limited. From water elemental chakra, compressed and released into a technique. Earth release, a great much light technique, Naruto clone shouted. The earth before him rumbled and liquefied as Naruto's elemental chakra softened it, while his nature manipulation used his chakra to force it towards an avalanche of mud. Naruto's clone made another hand sign and the water elemental chakra flowed forward. Water release, raging river technique. The water technique coming from the small streaming trickled into the clearing, combined with the power of the earth technique and produced as a devastating current of mud and water. It propelled out from the shadow clone and swept into the forest. Saplings and plants were torn from the roots as mud swept across the great tree trunks, and individual conclusions to this combination technique would be a fire technique that would turn the mud into a rolling river of blistering tar that would engulf and consume all that it touched. However, Naruto was having enough trouble with 2 elemental chakra, let alone 3. Under the original's eye, the clone suddenly let out a gurgling noise. Bright points appeared all over the clone's body as Tenketsu overloaded underneath the strain of the multiple strands of elemental chakra before it exploded in a puff of smoke. Naruto grimaced at the mildly unpleasant memory. Normally, the shadow clone technique would not include pain in the memory for the safety of the user, but Naruto had altered that part of the technique when he needed to so he could diagnose how and when a technique went wrong. Too much chakra, Naruto murmured to himself. Elemental composition was fine, but the Tenketsu couldn't handle the strain. I need to disperse the chakra over multiple Tenketsu. It was much harder than it sounded. Naruto went to make another clone when the tattoo burned on his shoulder. He frowned. The Hokage usually allowed, or rather insisted, on his training time. It was unusual for him to summon this late. He snapped his fingers and his clones obediently dispelled. Naruto felt flashes of memory assaulting him, but he shrugged them off with practice easier. Placing his mask over his face, he disappeared into a body flicker. He reappeared with the Hokage by the Hokage's side. The old man was standing on the highest level of the Hokage tower. Watching the sun sit over the Hokage's monument, usually Naruto could get a good read on the third Hokage, but it was with some trepidation that he found himself unable to access how his leader was feeling. The stone face on the monument looked as if they were held more emotion than Sarutobi did right at the moment. Ferret, Sarutobi spoke softly and with the weight of a man who had spent his entire life giving orders and being obeyed. The first directive has been breached. I have a need of you. Do you accept? Yes, Naruto answered immediately, even as his eyes widened with surprise. His white proclaimed mask blocked everything as he stood. How may I serve? Sarutobi turned around and Naruto saw the first traces of emotion, a grim, hard look that masked something dark that lurked beneath the old man's face. Whatever had happened, it was personal. Several minutes ago, I was assaulted within this very tower, Sarutobi began. He ignored Naruto's splutter of shock. The Azalians successfully retrieved the scroll of forbidden seals and escaped. Shift. I have confirmed that the identity of the attacker. Sarutobi sounded grin. He motioned to the table where a gleaming sphere of crystal glimmered with chakra. At this moment, Sarutobi Konohamaru has left the boundaries of the village in possession of the forbidden scroll of seals. Naruto jerked reflexively and drew a deep breath. Confirm identity? He asked quickly. It's been confirmed, Sarutobi said tiredly, and for a moment he looked very old and very tired. He moved from the window and took a seat at the table. It was him, Naruto. What's more, he knew exactly where to find the scroll and how to bypass the protection. With all due respect, Naruto asked carefully, but how did he subdue you? I merely though it was one of his little tricks, Sarutobi admitted with a great sigh. He threw some smoke balls, yelled something foolish out. I allowed him to play his game, but the smoke lasted longer than usual, and by the time it had cleared, he was gone, with the scroll. He turned back to the window. This is a result of my foolishness. He sighed, and his voice was hard again. Naruto said nothing. Konohamaru was the grandson of the third Hokage, and his status allowed him a lot of leeway. However, not even the Hokage could protect him from the outcome of this. The forbidden scroll of seals was an S-rank secret, and stealing it was paramount to high treason. There would be severe repercussions for all involved. Konohamaru for stealing it and Sarutobi for allowing it to happen. However, it is more complicated than that. Sarutobi interrupted Naruto's thought process. Konohamaru failed his graduation exam today. I have reason to suspect that somebody may be using his current emotional state for their own advantage. I see, Naruto murmured. His thought was conflicted and his emotion barely under control. He was too close to this at the moment, so with a deep breath, he pulled back and hardened his heart. What are your orders, sir? I have located the boy, Sarutobi straightened, and the full force of intent care bearing down on Naruto. It wasn't a desire to kill, rather it was the power of the highest priority order in Konoha and the effect it instilled in those with the will of fire. You will shadow him until the true culprit appears. Retrieve my grandson at all costs and destroy the scroll if necessary. Sarutobi met Naruto's eyes from beyond his mask. Do to the culprit as you see fit. You have full operational control. However, the nature of the assignment have been deemed S-rank and may not be divulged. Even if Konohamaru had been deceived, he had still committed high treason. Naruto understood immediately. The less who knew, the better. He bowed his head and made his way to the table where a large map of Konoha had been unraveled. Sarutobi gave the coordinate to Konohamaru's position and Naruto stared intently at the map for a few minutes. He then pressed his fingers on his tattoo. Cat, he called out quietly. Bird. There was a moment's pause and then two Anbus arrived with a small puff of smoke, heads immediately bowing as they saw their Hokage. They wore white clothes over their armor and their proclaimed masks before the discreet signs of seniority. The Anbu captains of Epsilon and Omega Anbu combat platoons stood rigid. As the Hokage's assistant and the only member of the Sigma squad, the Hokage's personal guard, Naruto technically held seniority over them in theory. His commands were most often the commands of the third Hokage and had to be respected. However, it was very seldom that Naruto interacted with the captains and only really saw them at the general purpose division meetings every couple of months. In this situation though, Naruto had full operational control and commanded not only the captains but their 25-man platoons. Priority directive number 1. I have full operational control, Naruto said quietly. Two emotionless masks shifted and stared at him with great intensity. Cat, your platoon will surround the perimeter of A4F to A5C. Entry denial. He paused and glanced at the map. Move out immediately. Dismissed. Cat disappeared and Bor waited patiently as Naruto studied the map carefully. Bor, you'll position your platoon to cover section G3A to G3Z. Naruto concluded, tracing his fingers across the map. Deny entry and detain those attempting to exit. I will be within the zone shadowing the target. Backup may be required. Go. Bor nodded and disappeared, leaving Naruto and Sarutobi alone in the room. Once he was gone, Naruto gazed at Sarutobi. The third Hokage nodded once, approving Naruto's plans, and the young Anbu let out a quiet sigh of relief. This was the first time he had ever had full operational control over such an urgent mission. He had been present over dozens of not hundreds of missions, briefings, and had watched as he stood loyally by the Hokage's side as the Anbu captain and Jonin commander had talked in short terse of words over whatever mission they were planning. Even the Anbu commander had interjected at one point. The enigmatic figure saying 3 words that in hindsight had entirely changed the outcome of the mission. Naruto was just hoping some of that had sunk in. It might have been a bit of an overkill to drag out 2 out of the 6 Anbu combat platoons, but Naruto wasn't taking any chances with such a dangerous S-rank artifact on the loose. The mission has commenced, Naruto told his Hokage quietly. He paused. I will bring him home. A second later, the third Hokage was alone. Okay guys, I'm gonna end it here. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, because I think it's only 32% of you guys who actually subscribe. I would really appreciate it, and when we hit 1,000 subscribers, the quality of the videos will rise significantly, like a week after it. So yeah, subscribe. I will see you guys maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure. Have a great Christmas. Bye.
do.